So it's time for another ranking video, and it's 2019, my top 10, and there will be a few honourable mentions as always. So let's get started with my first honourable mention. It's Lloyd Cole. I've been a long time fan of Lloyd Cole right from the beginning when he was with the Commotions. This time out, his 11th studio album, and it's called Guesswork, and it includes contributions from his former Commotion bandmates, Blair Cowan on guitar and Neil Clark. It's a mix of electronic style rock, pop style rock, acoustic, a bit of acoustic, and a bit of pop rock. It's very ambient, and the songs are very well crafted and mixed with experimental synthesized projects. An amalgam, really, of his more recent work from the millennium onwards, with his early musical styles from the 80s, those rock gems that we all remember, like Perfect Skin. Lyrically, it's about relationships that end and regrets. He also comments on society's regrets. 8 new songs performed on synthesizers and drum machines. Mainly he's in charge. So that's the first honourable mention, Guesswork by Lloyd Cole. The next honourable mention is the album by Joe Jackson, released in 2019, and it was titled Fool. Well, Jackson's been playing, of course, music since the mid-70s, and his music is a sort of pastiche of punk, pop, jazz, Latin, and a bit of classical material. So you really get quite a melting pot of styles and genres here throughout his discography. As I say, he started on the back of the punk movement with Look Sharp and I'm the Man in 1979. But this album is a quartet, and he's really retreading the work he did in his previous 2 albums, Fast Forward and Rain. He's got Graham Maybe on bass, who's been around with him virtually from the start. And the standout track on this is the closer, Alchemy, a moody but polished bit of cocktail jazz, which tends to epitomise the set. It's a very solid record, so get to listen to it. It's Full. It's by Joe Jackson. Next up is All Blues. This is by Peter Frampton. Peter, of course, is a veteran guitarist who started out with Humble Pie and The Herd, and then went solo. And who could ever forget here? Peter Frampton Comes Alive, a live double album. I actually saw him on that tour. And of course, he did have a long spell in David Bowie's touring band. And I also saw him on the Spider the Glass Spider tour. This selection of numbers is aptly titled All Blues, and it enables Frampton to display his impressive guitar playing skills. Prior to its announcement, though, Frampton announced that he had an inclusion body myositis, whatever that is, a degenerative autoimmune disease that weakens the muscles, and many thought that this might be his last dance on guitar. It wasn't, but it was certainly debilitating. The title, of course, is an album that was also done by Miles Davis. Sorry, not an album, a song actually performed by Miles Davis on his historic 1959 album, Kind of Blue. So there we have it. It's great music. He's a great guitarist. Get to listen to it. All Blues, Peter Frampton, released 2019. So we move on. Father of the Bride. This is by Vampire Weekend. 6 years between drinks here. The last one, Modern Vampires of the City, I have, and I really liked it. This one, haven't heard it many times. But there has been a few changes. The founding member, Rostam Batmanglij, left to pursue a solo career, and the leader and the songwriter, Ezra Koenig, he left the East Coast to settle in Los Angeles. And these shifts in lineup and location are just a few of the changes on this album. Uh, the the album was inspired, apparently, it's the fourth album by Vampire Weekend, inspired by work by one Casey Musgrove, who inspired Koenig to emphasize his characters and sing about emotional histories in his lyrics. And he also crops up doing duets with one Daniel Ham, whose subtle vocals add richness to the album. Hold You Now is a track where they share the vocals, and there's also an electro country feel to it. It's a pretty impressive album, but I do need to listen to it again. That's why it's only in my honourable mentions. Father of the Bride by Vampire Weekend. Next one up on my honourable mentions is an album called Oklahoma by the veteran blues artist Keb Mo. The album was named Oklahoma after the home state of one Dara Tucker, who's the songwriter who co-wrote the title song with Keb. Of course, Keb is a veteran blues troubadour. But on this album, we also get work by Rosanne Cash, Robert Randolph, who plays a nifty slide steel guitar, and of course Taj Mahal. They all put in appearances. The songs, many of them are political in nature, but he still very much pinned the most of the songs to his blues roots. But it's well worth a listen. Oklahoma by Keb Mo. Next honourable mention is an album by Robert Forster called Inferno. You might recall that Robert Forster was in the very, very talented 80s band from Australia called the Go-Betweens. He was one of the leaders there. He's made quite a few solo albums since the demise of the Go-Betweens, and this is his eighth, although it's his first in 4 years. He's leads a quintet, and these 9 songs were mostly cut live in the studio. The songs are delivered with some wry wit, subtle yet biting insight, and unpretentious his use of language. And there's an elegance and understated feel to the melodies. It's very, very tasteful, very nice listen, but you've got to repeatedly listen to it, otherwise it will sort of drift over you. But anyway, it's in my honourable mention. It's Inferno, and it's by Robert Forster. The late great Prince released an album, or his estate did anyway, in 2019, and it's called Originals. Lots of demos really of original songs, and these songs Prince handed off to other artists, but these are his versions. And they include the Bangles' Manic Monday, Martika, Love Thy Will Be Done, and Nothing Compares to You, which he gave to Sinead, plus a song that was handed over to Kenny Rogers, would you believe, called You're My Love. It all makes for a very, very interesting listen. And of course, with talents that he possesses, there's always something in his albums that makes you want to tap your feet. So that's Originals by Prince. Next honourable mention is the 11th album by the Welsh band Stereophonics. It's called Kind, and frontman Kelly Jones sketches and documents a bit of reality mixed with beauty. While everyday observations are tackled, he also delves into his own existence and experience to create songs that come from a place of genuine wisdom. There are plenty of lessons learned and an in-depth understanding of life's own truths and everything that comes with it. The music pendulum switches from punchy rockers like I Just Wanted the Goods to melodic heart-tinged ballads, Example, Fly Like an Eagle. Still a very competent album, and better than his recent ones, I would suggest. Jones's vocals are full of emotion, and the band develop the sound with an ease that tell you that these guys have been around the block. So that's the 11th studio album from Stereophonics, and it's called Kind. Lots of honourable mentions here, which really reflects the fact I haven't listened to these albums very much. Next one is Days of the Bagnalled Summer by Belle and Sebastian. This, of course, was the soundtrack to a movie of the same name, one that I've actually seen, and it's a very nice little comedy about real life. And The cinematic adaptation is worth a look, and it's an adaptation of a novel by Jeff Wintard. The individual songs fit together elegantly, flirting with the ephemeral, and the music floats by, leaving elements of melodies and vibe behind. Music that makes you hug others as it eases over your listening palate. Very tasteful stuff, Belle and Sebastian, but again, repeated listens is essential. Last of the honourable mentions here, and it's the 14th album by the American artist Beck, and it's titled Hyperspace. He's got a couple of famous musicians on this one, Sky Ferrara, who sings on Die Waiting, and then Chris Martin from Coldplay appears on Stratosphere. Lots of layers of analog synths and drum machines on this album, and it certainly is very much electronic soft rock. I've got quite a soft spot for Beck, and although this album was criticised, I still enjoy it, but it's in my honourable mentions. So the first one in my top 10 is by an album. Sorry, it's by an artist called Palace, an English-based band, and this is their second album, Life After. It's very much a case of sort of soft indie pop. Her debut was in 2016, and now this album is they're just a three-piece, having lost their bassist, who's moved on to other things. It has very much a warmth. It's a soft indie strum layered with heavier rock drums. The track Berlin has very much spiraling guitars, which are highlighted, and the vocals explore the bleakness of such interesting subjects as death, loss, and the meaning of existence. So you can get a feel to this. It's a very nice, tasteful little album. Again, repeated listens. Otherwise, you could be you could find out that you've got to the end of the album and can't remember any of it. So don't do anything else while you're listening. So that's my number 10, Life After, by the English-based band Palace. My number 9 choice is an album called This Land, and it's by the American guitar player Gary Clark Jr. Since making his debut in 2012, which was called Black and Blue, Clark has steadily been widening his boundaries as a musician. And This Land is his toughest and most ambitious work to date, a bold and often ferocious set of songs that serves a reflection of African American musical idioms and thoughts about American life in the midst of the Trump era. He's a gifted and forceful guitar player, but on This Land, the songs are perhaps more important than the solos. The passions of the lyrics impact you. However, the music touches on funky rock, as in the title track, of punkability, and a proto reggae type feel to one track. There's also some hard rock and some R&B. Also, if you listen closely, he seems to have been quite influenced by one Jimi Hendrix. So I suggest you give it a listen. It's called This Land. It's by Gary Clark Jr. And of course, it came out in 2019. At number 8 it was the album by Morrissey called California Sun. This album is a covers album. It's his 12th studio release. And his producer, Joe, and let's get this pronunciation right, Ciccarelli, is a frequent collaborator on this album. Um, the last two, World Peace and High Low, had pretty negative reviews, but this one was much more positively received. And some of the covers are real gems from American radio. We have a cover of It's Over, the Roy Orbison song, Wedding Bell Blues, which was originally performed by the Fifth Dimension, and Gary Puckett and the Union Gap's Lady Willpower. And Morrissey, of course, well, he's got the class to stamp his own style on these radio classics. So I suggest you get to listen to it. It's called California Sun. It's by Morrissey, and it's at number 8 in my countdown. At 7 is Jeff Lynne's ELO, and the album's title is From Out of Nowhere. This is the 14th studio album by ELO, but the second to be released under the Jeff Lynne ELO alias. I think I got that right. Some immaculate orchestrated pop here with some old-time rock and roll. That's what you get from Jeff. Similar pomp business in A New World Record and Out of the Blue. So no great surprises here, but the melodies are terrific, and it's got an air of originality to it. I think this is with the second one under this ELO moniker. Anyway, get to listen to it. It's at my number 7. It's called From Out of Nowhere. It's by Jeff Lynne's ELO. So to number 6, and this is the latest from Three Chords and the Truth, the latest album from Van Morrison. Would you believe it? Over the past 4 years, Morrison has recorded no less than 6 albums, and most have been populated with his traditional covers of blues, soul, and jazz, with a smattering of original numbers woven in with those covers. Three Chords and the Truth is titled after Harlan Howard's famous description of country music, and this first collection of all new original material since 2016, Keep Me Singing. Morrison penned 14 of the 15 songs here, and in the road band were familiar faces such as Jay Berliner, who's an acoustic jazz guitar player, and he featured on Astral Weeks. And there's also David Hayes, who was Van's bass player in the 70s. So familiar ground here, but still excellent. It's Van Morrison's Three Chords and the Truth, and it's my number 6. At 5 then, the 19th studio album by Bruce Springsteen. It's called Western Stars. And this album actually was performed in its entirety for a film which was released by Warner Brothers. The soundtrack of that movie, Western Stars. Springsteen stated that in April 2019, that the album was influenced by Southern California pop music from the 1970s and influenced by artists such as Glenn Campbell and Burt Bacharach. It's a lovely piece of music. I haven't really got into it as much as I'd like to, but it was strong enough for me to put it in my top 10. And I've selected it at number 5. So try and get to listen to it. And Bruce is featured on a handful of instruments here, including the glockenspiel, the banjo, and the celeste, and mellotron, to name a few. So to 4 then. This is the first debut album by the artist Brittany Murphy, and it's called Jamie. Now, for you music fans, you'll probably recall that Brittany Murphy was in a super band, Alabama Shakes, before she got into this solo record. The album is named after her sister, a sibling who died from a rare cancer when she was 13 years old. It's very much a tribute, a message maybe to a sibling that she's lost ahead of time. There are elements of Americana, funk, and soul, a bit of indie as well in this. Brittany is always challenging, I find, when you listen to her. But when you've finished, you realise that she's a huge talent. And she's got a tremendous voice that echoes back to the greats like Janis Joplin. Anyway, I would suggest you get to listen to it. It's called Jamie by Brittany Murphy. And it's at number 4 in my countdown. Once again, I've got my maths wrong. And in fact, I've got 2 number 4s. So my top 10 really is a top 11, but never mind. The second album at number 4 is entitled Norman fucking Rockwell by Lana Del Rey. It's her 5th album, and it's really the first album by her that I've really listened to, and I found it absolutely tremendous, even on first listen. She mixes up pop, psychedelic rock, classic rock, folk rock, soft rock, you name it, with ballads. And the music floats over you, creating warmth and an emotional connection. It's extremely creative. And of course, Lana Del Rey is her persona. She's actually Lizzie Grant. She writes all the material. And the music very much combines a fading American dream with soaring but melancholic pop songwriting. And a lot of the music is pretty sad and draws on the influence of American classic pop. I really do recommend you get to listen to this one. It's Norman fucking Rockwell by Lana Del Rey. So to number 3, and I've selected Human World by Pete Perrett. Now, a couple of years prior to this, Perrett bounced back into the music business with a tremendous album called How the West Was Won. And we were all rather shocked to find out that he hadn't died from heroin overdose. Well, 2 years later, he repeated the dose with Human World. And it's a very, very good album. And he basically manages to convey that only one's resonance. And his delivery is still very much in that post-punk field, although the production is much more competent. There's some gentle melodies which build to string arranged songs, and I really love it. And of course, I'll probably do a review on this one, so I can go into it in more depth. But on this ranking video, let's just say get to listen to Human World by Pete Perrett, and it's my number 3 on my countdown. So to my number 2, and once we're going into the geriatric award, and my number 2 is an album called Who, and yeah, you've guessed it, it's by The Who. It's actually only their 12th studio album, and it's their second album in, and wait for it, 37 years. Pete is reenacting the youthful desire to die before he gets old. Roger and Pete now have bassist Pino Palladino and drummer Zach Starkey, Ringo's son, playing with them. And the relationship between Daltrey and Townsend is still magnetic. The singer serves as the songwriter's best interpreter and editor. And they are still very much the core of this band. The album comprises ballads, rock music, electronic experimentation, and classic Who-ish songs. As with previous albums, vocalist Roger Daltrey and guitarist Townsend recorded their parts separately. I'm not quite sure why. And it tackles the struggles of being an elderly rock musician. This one is a grower, but it's class. It's real class. And it's my number 2. It's called Who, and it's by The Who. So my number one for 2019 is an album called Africa Speaks, and it's by the Latin American band Santana. 25th studio album by them, and it was recorded and produced in 10 days by Rick Rubin. They did actually record 49 songs, but there aren't 49 songs on the album. Carlos's wife used an 8-piece band, and she was involved in that band. And one has to say that this is terrific stuff. He also included on this album two female vocalists, one of which was Laura Mvula. I've got one or two of her solo albums, but the woman that really stole the show is called Buiki, and it's an absolute gem, this. So there's some trademark African Latin, as you would expect here, but it's just one style among many. This is inspired by African melodies and polyrhythms. And the Santana octet is really on fire here. The highlight, as I referred to earlier, is one Concha Boiki, who's from Spain, and she sings the vocals throughout the album. And she's a terrific singer and a songwriter and poet and producer in her own right. Very versatile. Has been nominated for Latin Grammys in several genres before, and is very adept at flamenco, jazz, soul, funk, and Afro pop. Very powerful vocals. So really get to listen to this. You've got the magnificence of Santana's guitar solo coupled with this gem singing vocals. It's a tremendous package. And so that concludes my video, ranking videos 2019, 11 albums chosen, plus a handful of honourable mentions. So that's it from me.